A tattoo is a permanent monument to a temporary version of yourself. You paid a stranger to violently tear open your dermis with reciprocating needles, injecting permanent chemical boulders into your flesh to capture a fleeting emotion, a cultural trend, or a name you no longer speak. For years, you believed that ink was frozen in time, but it is not. Right now, as you sit still, a brutal, silent war is raging just millimeters beneath your skin. Millions of your own immune cells are sacrificing their lives in an endless, generational custody battle to keep that ink from poisoning the rest of your body. Your body treats your art like a toxic alien invasion. And when you finally decide to change your mind and erase that past mistake, the solution we have engineered is nothing short of absolute madness. To heal your skin, we must first make it explode from the inside out using a weapon capable of heating your cells to the temperature of glowing iron. Act 1. The biological prison of the unchanging self. To understand why erasing a tattoo is so inherently violent, we must first unravel the terrifying biological illusion of why it stays there in the first place. When a tattoo needle punctures the outer defensive wall of your epidermis and drives deep into the gelatinous matrix of the dermis, it is not painting a canvas. It is committing a massive physical trauma. It is ripping open thousands of tiny blood vessels and depositing thousands of massive jagged chemical boulders made of heavy metals and synthetic polymers directly into your living tissue. Your immune system does not see art. It sees a Category 1 biosecurity breach. Instantly, an emergency chemical alarm is sounded throughout your bloodstream. Specialized white blood cells called macrophages rush to the site of the disaster like microscopic paramedics and firefighters. Their fundamental evolutionary directive is simple. Find the foreign invader, swallow it whole through a process called phagocytosis, dissolve it with internal enzymes, and carry the waste away to be flushed out of your body. But when the macrophages arrive at the scene of a fresh tattoo, they encounter an insurmountable evolutionary nightmare. The ink particles are not small like bacteria or viruses. They are monolithic. They are building-sized mountains of solid pigment. The macrophages open their cellular membranes as wide as possible, attempting to consume the ink, but the particles are simply too gargantuan to be digested or transported. This brings us to a fascinating psychological and biological paradox. When an organism cannot destroy an invading force, it resorts to the next best strategy: containment. This is a well-documented phenomenon in human pathology known as granulomatous inflammation or foreign body sequestration. We see this exact same defensive mechanism when the body encounters dangerous, indestructible foreign entities like tuberculosis bacteria or asbestos fibers. Unable to eradicate the threat, the immune system sacrifices its resources to build a biological wall around the invader, completely isolating it from the rest of the living system. This is the hidden reality of your tattoo. It is not an integrated part of your body. It is a highly secure prison of flesh. Millions of your macrophages swallow whatever tiny fragments they can, while others literally lock arms around the massive pigment boulders, trapping the ink inside their own cellular bodies. This creates a state of perpetual stagnant warfare. The ink stays in place because your cells are holding it hostage. When these brave cellular jailers eventually grow old and die, they rupture, briefly releasing the ink back into the tissue. But before the pigment can migrate or cause systemic damage, new generations of fresh macrophages, recruited by ongoing inflammatory signals, immediately rush in and swallow the exact same ink particles all over again. Your tattoo remains visible for decades, not because the ink is stable, but because millions of your cells are continually dying and reincarnating to keep that specific memory trapped in place. Act 2. The physics of selected obliteration and death light. For centuries, humanity attempted to break this biological prison through sheer barbaric force. Early historical records show that ancient cultures attempted tattoo removal through salabration, which involved rubbing raw table salt into open, scraped skin to draw out the pigment through osmotic pressure. Others used dermabrasion, literally using sandpaper or rotating wire brushes to grate away successive layers of human flesh until the dermis was exposed and scraped clean. These methods were not only agonizingly painful, but they almost universally resulted in horrific infections, massive scar tissue, and permanent disfigurement. The fundamental problem was lack of precision. You could not destroy the hidden criminal without slaughtering the entire civilian population of surrounding healthy cells. Everything changed with the advent of modern biophysics and the realization that we could weaponize the electromagnetic spectrum. To destroy an indestructible particle buried deep inside human jelly, we had to exploit a profound principle known as selective photothermolysis. Think of electromagnetic radiation as a continuous wave of pure cosmic energy traveling through the void at the speed of light. The shorter the wavelength, the higher the frequency, and the more terrifying the kinetic punch it carries. To understand how we use this light to selectively target an ink particle without cooking your arm, imagine your skin as a clear block of gelatin dessert, and the tattoo ink as tiny crumbs of dark toast suspended deep inside that gelatin. If you shine a standard household flashlight at the block, the ambient light passes directly through the clear gelatin without transferring much energy. However, the dark, opaque toast crumbs absorb that light energy instantly, heating up while the surrounding gelatin remains perfectly cool. This is the core concept of selective photothermolysis. We must find a very specific frequency of light that looks completely invisible and harmless to the clear, watery cells of your human skin, but looks highly absorbent and deadly to the specific chemical color of the tattoo ink. However, this color matching is an intricate, unforgiving science. Light behavior is governed by the laws of reflection and absorption. A red ink particle looks red to the human eye because it reflects all red light wavelengths while absorbing other colors. Therefore, if you shoot a red laser at red tattoo ink, the ink will simply reflect the beam away unharmed, and the energy will scatter into the surrounding tissue, causing massive collateral burns. To destroy red ink, you must shoot it with its exact optical opposite, a high-energy green laser beam, which the red molecules will greedily and fatally absorb. Conversely, black ink is the ultimate target of opportunity because black pigments absorb every single frequency of light across the entire visible and invisible spectrum, making it the easiest and most efficient color to obliterate. But even with the perfect color match, shooting a continuous steady beam of high-powered laser light into human flesh would still result in absolute catastrophe. Heat obeys the laws of thermodynamics. It always seeks equilibrium. If you hold a laser beam on an ink particle for even a fraction of a second, the heat accumulated inside that particle will immediately bleed outward into the surrounding healthy cells, cooking them alive and creating third-degree internal burns and permanent, thick keloid scarring. To bypass the limitations of thermal diffusion, scientists had to look at time itself. They engineered Q-switched and picosecond lasers. These machines do not fire a continuous stream of light. Instead, they compress an astronomical amount of raw electromagnetic energy into an unimaginably brief pulse. We are talking about a packet of energy that lasts for only a few trillionths of a second. This duration is so impossibly short that the laser pulse literally begins and ends before the first individual photon even has time to physically conduct heat into the adjacent cellular membranes. It is a surgical strike executed at the speed of light, designed to trigger a mechanical cataclysm before thermodynamics can even react. Act 3. The microscopic nuclear winter inside the dermis. When you sit in the clinician's chair and hear the rapid, deafening, metallic snapping sound of the laser machine, you are listening to the sound of miniature controlled explosions occurring inside your own body. Let us slow down time to a crawl to witness the absolute carnage of a single picosecond pulse. The laser fires. A dense wall of high-energy photons screams toward your skin at 300,000 kilometers per second. It tears through the dead protective outer layers of your epidermis. Because the wavelength has been precisely calibrated for selective photothermolysis, the clear, watery cells of your healthy skin act like transparent windows. The photons slide right past them, leaving the cellular structures completely unharmed. But then the light wave hits the mountain range of black ink trapped within the flesh prison. Within a single nanosecond, a billionth of a second, a violent energetic annihilation occurs. On a molecular level, the incoming photons slam directly into the tightly bound electrons of the pigment molecules. The electrons absorb this massive influx of kinetic energy instantly, tearing away from their atomic orbits. This sudden, catastrophic accumulation of localized energy has nowhere to go. It transforms instantly into a localized spike of pure concentrated heat. Within a trillionth of a second, the internal temperature of the ink particle skyrockets to a staggering 600 degrees Celsius. This is hot enough to melt aluminum and make solid iron glow a bright, ominous red. Because this heat is generated so quickly, the ink particle undergoes an extreme thermal expansion. It attempts to swell outward at supersonic speeds, but the immense structural pressure of the surrounding tissue resists it. The ink particle is pushed far past its mechanical breaking point. Internal stress lines fracture violently, and with a microscopic shock wave, the gargantuan mountain of ink literally shatters, ripping apart into millions of jagged microscopic pieces in a cloud of superheated chemical dust. But the violence does not stop with the ink. This microscopic explosion triggers a horrific secondary catastrophe for the surrounding biology. The water naturally present inside your living cells and the surrounding interstitial fluid is instantly vaporized by the 600-degree thermal spike. It flashes into superheated steam, expanding rapidly to occupy a volume hundreds of times greater than liquid water. This explosive expansion of steam rips your cells apart from the inside. The very macrophages that spent years carefully guarding the ink are instantaneously cooked alive or violently torn to pieces by the mechanical force of the steam bubble. The neighboring blood vessels are ruptured, causing localized microhemorrhages. This rapid expansion of hot gas under your skin is what creates the distinct immediate visual phenomenon known to clinicians as frosting. To the outside observer, the tattoo instantly turns a stark, chalky white, looking as though it has been frozen. In reality, it is the exact opposite of ice. You are looking at a dense network of microscopic steam caves and gas bubbles trapped just beneath your skin, scattering the light and lifting the epidermis. Act 4. The cleanup operation in the human filter. From your perspective up in the macro world, all of this complex physics and cellular devastation registers as a singular, sharp, searing agony. It feels as though someone is snapping a white-hot rubber band against your raw flesh, accompanied by the distinct smell of vaporized organic material and burnt hair. Once the laser operator moves the wand away, leaving behind a battlefield of scorched earth, the true work of tattoo removal actually begins. The laser did not remove a single atom of ink from your body. It merely converted a large, unmanageable problem into millions of tiny, manageable pieces. The actual removal of the tattoo is not a triumph of physics. It is a triumph of human biology. Inside your dermis, the temporary steam bubbles begin to cool and collapse, returning to liquid water. What remains is a microscopic wasteland of cellular carnage, floating debris, and shredded ink dust. The wounded, dying cells that survive the initial blast begin to chemically scream for help, releasing a cascade of distress signals known as cytokines and pro-inflammatory mediators. This triggers a massive systemic inflammatory response. Your blood vessels widen dramatically, allowing a massive surge of fluid and fresh white blood cells to flood into the zone of trauma. From the outside, your skin becomes angry, heavily swollen, bright red, and warm to the touch, mimicking the symptoms of a severe localized third-degree sunburn. Now an army of hundreds of thousands of fresh, highly aggressive macrophages streams into the ruins. Their job is to clean up the casualties of war. They begin by consuming the debris of your dead cells. Then, they turn their attention to the shattered remains of the ink mountains. Because the laser successfully fractured the pigment into microscopic dust, these new immune cells can finally do what their ancestors could never achieve. They can successfully swallow the fragments and move them. The macrophages absorb the tiny ink particles and enter the lymphatic system, a vast complex network of drainage vessels that acts as the internal sewage system of the human body. The cells swim through this lymphatic fluid, carrying the chemical pigment away from your arm and transporting it directly to your regional lymph nodes. Here, the story of tattoo removal takes a dark, often unmentioned turn. Your body tries its best to break down these foreign chemicals using powerful internal acids and enzymes. If the ink you used was made of simple, organic compounds, your liver and kidneys will eventually filter the dissolved byproducts out of your bloodstream, allowing you to literally pass your old tattoo out of your body through your urine. But if your tattoo was made with low-grade, highly stable industrial inks containing heavy metals like titanium dioxide, lead, or cobalt, your immune system will hit another dead end. The lymph nodes cannot dissolve these elements. As a result, the ink fragments simply accumulate inside your lymph nodes, permanently staining your internal filtration system the color of your old tattoo for the rest of your natural life. Furthermore, because the sheer volume of ink released during a single laser session is so overwhelming, your immune system cannot harvest all of it before the localized healing process concludes. Within a few days, the inflammatory panic subsides. The skin begins to knit itself back together. Growth factors are released, and new skin cells form to seal the wound, creating a protective crust or scab over the area. In a desperate bid to reestablish biological equilibrium, the surviving cells in your dermis look at the remaining ink dust that was not carried away, and they do the only thing they know how to do. They swallow it, lock arms, and rebuild the exact same flesh prison all over again. This is the ultimate cognitive twist of the entire procedure. Tattoo removal is not a one-time erasure. It is a slow, agonizing game of biological attrition. This is why you are forced to wait 2 full months between clinical sessions, and why it requires anywhere from 5 to 12 separate visits to see results. Each single session is a repetitive cycle of catastrophic bombardment, mass cellular slaughter, lymphatic evacuation, and subsequent biological reconstruction. You must systematically break down the prison, let the body carry away a fraction of the inmates, and then return a month later to bomb the newly constructed prison all over again until there is nothing left to guard. The science of erasing a tattoo reveals a profound truth about both our bodies and our minds. Our physical biology is structurally designed to protect us from our own changing psychological desires. Your body is a deeply conservative, defensive system that values stability above all else. It will literally sacrifice millions of its own living components to preserve the permanent choices of your past, even when your conscious mind has completely evolved past them. If you are currently planning to get inked, or if you are preparing to undergo the grueling process of laser removal, treat the decision with the respect it deserves. Your skin is a living, breathing protector, not a dry piece of paper that can be easily erased without a cost. If you have ever survived the intense process of laser tattoo removal, or if you have a tattoo you currently regret, leave a comment below telling us the story behind it. Let us know how your own biological prison is holding up, and do not forget to subscribe to Shadow Psychology DD for more deep dives into the hidden mechanics of the human machine.